Every World Cup has that one team. In 2018, it was Croatia. In 2022, it was Morocco. But in 2026, there was one nation that absolutely nobody saw coming. Cape Verde. A country so overlooked that before this tournament, half the football world probably couldn't have pointed it out on a map. Yet somehow they arrived at the biggest football tournament on Earth and decided, no, they weren't just there to make up the numbers. They were here to ruin everybody else's plans. Because what happened over the next few weeks was genuinely one of the best underdog stories we've seen in years. Before we get into football, let's appreciate just how ridiculous this actually is. Cape Verde has a population of around 600,000 people. That's less than cities in the United Kingdom like Liverpool, Sheffield, or Bristol. Imagine trying to build a World Cup squad from a place smaller than some English cities, and then competing against countries with hundreds of millions of people. Brazil, Argentina, France, England, Spain. It doesn't exactly seem fair. Yet football has always had one beautiful rule. The best team on paper doesn't always win. And Cape Verde were about to remind the entire world why that's the case. Now, coming into the tournament, expectations couldn't have been lower. Most predictions had them finishing near the bottom of their group. Some people genuinely expected them to leave with no points at all. The conversation wasn't, can Cape Verde qualify? It was, how many goals are they going to lose by? Football fans can be brutally honest. If you're not one of the traditional giants, people will write you off before you've even kicked a ball in the World Cup. But Cape Verde didn't care about this, because while everyone else was making prediction videos, they were quietly preparing to make history in the World Cup. And they did it in the funniest and best way possible. They didn't park the bus, they didn't get lucky, but what they did is they played fearless football. Every single attack they did looked dangerous, every tackle felt like a World Cup final, and every goal felt like it was sending another football expert into a complete frenzy. But before they shocked the knockout stage, they had to survive one of the toughest part of any World Cup at all. That is the group stage. And that's where people first realised Cape Verde weren't just here on a holiday. So the World Cup finally kicked off in 2026, and like every single tournament, fans were already making bold predictions after about 15 minutes, saying things like France are winning it, England are definitely bottling it, Brazil look unstoppable, business as usual. But Cape Verde, they were barely part of anyone's conversations within the World Cup genre. Most people expected them to quietly play their 3 group games, maybe nick a point if they got lucky, and head home with a nice souvenir from North America. Instead, they had other ideas. From the opening whistle, something felt different. They weren't sitting behind the ball with 10 men hoping for a miracle. They actually wanted to play football. They pressed high, they moved the ball quickly, and perhaps most surprisingly, they looked like they actually believed they belonged on the same pitch as everyone else. That confidence spread into its fans. You could see it in the celebrations. Every tackle was cheered like a goal. Every clearance got the crowd roaring. It wasn't just a team playing football in the World Cup anymore. It was an entire country believing something special might actually be possible. And then the internet caught on to Cape Verde. One minute everyone was arguing about whether England should play with 2 holding midfielders, and the next minute everyone was suddenly asking, hang on, has anyone actually watched Cape Verde play? Football Twitter, or as you might know it, X, if we're pretending anyone actually calls it that, absolutely loves an underdog story. Every tournament needs one. The team that sends prediction videos straight into the recycling bin. The team that makes pundits awkwardly say, well, I didn't see that coming. Cape Verde had officially become that team. Memes were everywhere. People who never watched a Cape Verde match in their entire lives were suddenly acting like lifelong supporters. Cape Verde became everyone's second team. You know the type? Profile pictures changed, flag emoji added, I've always rated them. Sure you have. But the funniest part is the players didn't seem surprised by this at all. While the rest of the football world was treating every result like some unbelievable miracle, Cape Verde just kept turning up and playing exactly the same way. They had no fear, no panic, and they were not trying to waste time after 5 minutes of a game. They were just playing with confidence. It started to feel like every big nation underestimated Cape Verde, and every time someone underestimated them, they were punished by Cape Verde for it. At this point, they weren't just hoping to survive, they were making people genuinely wonder, could they actually go on a proper run here? Then came the draw that everyone began talking about. The draw against Argentina, the reigning world champions, one of the favourites to win the tournament, the kind of team that usually sends underdogs home without too much trouble. Most fans looked at the fixture and thought, well, that's the end of Cape Verde's story. It would have been a great tournament, a brilliant effort, and nothing to be ashamed of. Except, Cape Verde clearly didn't go by that script, and what happened next became one of the most entertaining matches of the entire 2026 World Cup. This was it, the game that everyone had been waiting for in this World Cup. Cape Verde versus Argentina. World Cup favourites, a squad packed with world-class talent. The sort of team on paper should be putting 3 or 4 goals past a nation with Cape Verde's population and talent. If football was played on FIFA ratings alone, this match would have been over before it had kicked off. But thankfully, football isn't played on FIFA's ratings, because if it was, we wouldn't watch the World Cup. From the very first whistle, Cape Verde didn't look nervous that they were playing Argentina, which was honestly the weirdest part. Most underdogs spend the opening 20 minutes desperately trying to survive, whereas Cape Verde, they were pressing Argentina, running at defenders, winning tackles and creating chances. It almost looked like they'd forgotten who they were playing. Or maybe, just maybe, they didn't actually care who they were playing. And that's exactly what made them so dangerous in this World Cup. Eventually, Argentina did what Argentina usually does. They found a breakthrough, and everybody watching probably thought, right, that's that sorted. Except, about 5 minutes later, Cape Verde answered. The celebrations were incredible, the fans lost their mind, the bench exploded, and somewhere around the world, thousands of prediction videos instantly became completely irrelevant. Then Argentina scored again. Now surely this was the moment the fairy tale ended for Cape Verde. No, they came back again. At this point, watching the match felt like trying to close a pop-up advert. Every time you thought it had finally gone away, it came straight back. Argentina simply could not shake Cape Verde off. As the clock ticked down, you could actually feel pressure changing sides. Argentina were still the favourites to win the match, but suddenly they looked quite tense. Every misplaced pass had supporters groaning, every Cape Verde attack had people sitting a little further forward on the edge of their seats. Because that's the thing about football. Pressure doesn't care about history. It doesn't care how many World Cups you've won. It only cares about what's happening right now. And right then, Cape Verde believed in themselves. Eventually, Argentina found the goal that sent them through. They survived, but only just. The final whistle blew. Argentina celebrated advancing to the next round. Cape Verde applauded their fans. But here's the funny thing. When people talked about that match afterwards, they weren't talking about Argentina winning the match. They were talking about Cape Verde. Because sometimes you don't need to win the games to win everyone's respect. The funny thing about football is people remember moments. They remember the winners, they remember the trophies. But sometimes the teams that don't win are the ones that leave the biggest impact on a World Cup. And after Cape Verde's World Cup journey came to an end, something strange happened. People weren't laughing at them. They weren't saying, well, they did better than I expected. They were saying, I actually want to watch Cape Verde again. And that is probably the biggest compliment any team can receive, because football fans have always had a soft spot for the underdog. Everyone loves seeing the impossible become possible. We love the moment where a player nobody knew about scores the biggest goal of their life. We love the team that nobody expected suddenly making everyone pay attention. It's why people still talk about Leicester winning the Premier League. It's why Morocco's run in 2022 became legendary. And now, Cape Verde has joined that list. Not because they lifted the trophy, but because they made millions of people stop and think to themselves, maybe football isn't as predictable as we thought. For years, international teams have dominated football by the same names, the same countries, the same favourites, and the same conversations on repeat. Before every tournament, the question is usually, who can stop Brazil? Can France win again? Is this England's year, finally? And those stories are great, but football needs new stories. It needs teams that make people search Google. It needs fans discovering players they've never heard of before. It needs countries getting their moment on the biggest stage. And in this World Cup, Cape Verde got theirs. Because years from now, people probably won't remember every single result. They won't remember every minute of every match, but they'll remember the feeling. They'll remember watching a small island nation walk onto the biggest stage in world football and refusing to be intimidated by the biggest names. They'll remember the fans, the celebrations, the passion, the fact every match felt like something special was happening. Cape Verde didn't just participate in the 2026 World Cup, they made it special. And that's why football is the greatest sport in the world. Because sometimes the story isn't about who wins, sometimes the story is about the team that made everyone believe they could. Cape Verde proved that you don't need the biggest population, you don't need the most money, you don't need decades of history. Sometimes all you need is belief. And maybe, just maybe, the next time Cape Verde show up at a major tournament, we shouldn't call them underdogs anymore, because they've already shown the world exactly what they're capable of. But what do you think? Were Cape Verde the biggest surprise of the 2026 World Cup for you, or is there another team that deserves that title? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and like, because we've got plenty of more World Cup stories coming up. See you in the next one. Bye.